broadhead stuck him right in the side of the head. And I never will forget watching him run off with that arrow sticking straight out of the side of his head.
I saw antlers. Was one of those, oh my God, that's a huge deer.
There'd be tools lying around, and my wife would be walking around piles of sawdust.
I couldn't shoot because I couldn't shoot through that massive shoulder. This is a 10.5 foot, 1,500 pound brown bear.
Get recalibrated, be immersed in nature.
I went and cut a persimmon tree, and I made my first probably 24 bows out of persimmon.
That's how we dominated our fights, because we never got off the horse. We just kept shooting and battling.
As men, we have something in our DNA that seeks adventure.
I like nothing more than teaching this to other people, bringing people in from all walks of life and showing them this ancient art of bow making.
I've been bit by alligators and charged by bears, and I've been involved in plane crashes and boat flips.
I fell hard on my ass, and yeah, I chuckled about it. That really sucked. It was also a wake-up call.
My mother looked at me. She said, "Where'd you get that bow and arrows?" And I said, "I swapped my bicycle for it."
You don't go to Alaska because it's going to be super easy. You don't pick up a traditional bow because it's going to be easy. You do it for the challenge and the journey of overcoming difficult things.
He started forward, and as that leg came forward, I drew and released, and the bear was so big that the entire 30-inch arrow vanished inside his chest.
Welcome to the Bowyer Podcast, where we explore the ancient art of bow making, traditional archery, and the age-old pursuit of wild game. Together, we'll chat with masters of their craft to uncover the deeper why behind reviving the old ways in a modern world.
I just wanted to say that so far, all the times that I hunted, even the ones that I didn't shoot an animal, I had an amazing time.
Do you hear that sound? That beautiful melody is over a dozen well-trained hounds running through the mountains in Arizona as they chase a big old bear up a tree. In October of 2026, I'm going to be once again joining my friends at P&D Hunts to chase bears with my stick bow and a pack of dogs. If this sounds like an adventure to you, go ahead and email me at thebowyercollective@gmail.com, and I'll happily share the details to include pricing and logistics. P&D Hunts has offered to knock off over $1,200 off the outfitting fee for up to 5 hunters who'd like to join us. What I really like to do is set up an annual Bowyer Podcast hunt camp where we chase critters, eat well, and share stories around the campfire. If this sounds like a fun time, go ahead and hit me up, and we'll get you on the list.
Good evening and welcome to the Bowyer Podcast. This is your host, Matthew Morris. Thanks for dialing in. I'm really excited about our guest tonight because we've not had a wide international guest appearance, and we've got a fella that's coming on that's basically, we were just talking about the time zone difference, and he's basically like 1 million hours ahead of where I am here in the East Coast of North Carolina, and I think it's gonna be a really fun conversation. But first, I just want to thank everybody for chiming in. It's really cool to see each month the podcast grow. I talked about this, I think back in June at the 1 year mark, where I said, I'll do everything for a year. As long as I'm enjoying it, I'll do it. This is not a lucrative side hustle, believe it or not. Shocker. With any luck, I'll make tens of dollars a year, but I'm having fun, and I'll keep doing this until I'm not having fun anymore. Make sure that you do help keep this show on the radio waves. The show partners are all in the show notes, every single episode with discount codes and all that good stuff. You support us by supporting them. Give them your love, and give them reviews. Let them know what's good. Let them know what needs work and all that good stuff. These are all small businesses that appreciate candid feedback from folks that are going to use their equipment or kit or gear in the field. Also, check out the website, y'all. So it's thebowyercollective.com. If there's anything that you want to get on there, check it out. Get the merch, t-shirts, hoodies, all that good stuff. It's cold. You need a good hoodie with a cool logo. We also just designed a new shirt. Buddy Philippe from Our Numinous Nature, one of my favorite artists, just designed a sweet new t-shirt design that is like a modern take on a Wendigo. So it comes from indigenous lore. It's carrying a longbow. It's got a really cool scene. Get on the website, check that out because it's my new personal favorite. Other than that, let's get on to the introduction. I have here in front of me Mr. Poldi Waldmann Moloney from basically like 1 million miles away on the other side of the planet. in New Zealand. And Poldi and I don't really know each other. We just got connected on social media. I reached out to him and said, hey, man, you sound like you have a cool story to tell. I'd love to have you come on. And here we are. So this conversation will be really from the ground up, as green as it gets. Poldi, how's it going, man?
Yes, good. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man, it looks bright and sunny there where you are.
Yeah, no, just a good old sunny day here in New Zealand.
That's awesome, man. What island or what part of the island are you on?
Yeah, so I'm in the South Island and then the west coast of the South Island.
Right on, man. Yeah, so Southern Hemisphere, so it's summertime where you are, right? It's wintertime for us,
Mm-hmm.
yeah? And it's roughly 8 p.m., a little after 8 p.m. here. And would you say it was like 2 p.m. the next day in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, day in the future.
Day in the future. I like that. I appreciate it. Man, all I know right now is from when I gather through your awesome Instagram feed, and we'll put all that in the show notes and everything else. And you have a YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
When I think and look at the terrain of New Zealand, I'm just like, man, it's astonishingly beautiful, but it also is very rugged. There's a lot of vertical, and a lot of the critters, one, look like they come from another planet. Some of them are very familiar, and I'm sure you get into it, but pretty much everything you're hunting is an introduced or invasive species. Mm-hmm. But before we get into all the fun hunting stuff, can you give us a little Poldi 101? Tell us about yourself and until we somehow get to where we are here today.
Yeah, of course. Start with my age at 20, just turned 25 actually the other day.
Happy belated birthday.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, grew up on the North Island of New Zealand, and we had a little lifestyle block there, and my parents, hobbyist farmers, and mum was a farrier, so horse farrier, and then dad was a lecturer in the university and the main sort of town close to. So they weren't actually into hunting or anything, but two older brothers in a supportive environment. We basically got let loose on the farm and we could do what we wanted, which was, I feel like, what kind of started the whole drive to get into hunting. Yeah, I feel like my two older brothers are very mechanically minded, and they would be making go-karts and all sorts of random things, and I'd be trying to shoot a slingshot, or I didn't get the brains in that aspect of the family, I don't reckon.
They've got that engineer mindset, eh?
Exactly, yeah. And then, it must have been when I was close to 10, we moved down to the west coast of the South Island. I guess if you're not familiar with the North and South Island, basically the North Island.
Yeah, educate us on the geography, because the American education system sucks when it comes to geography that's not like America. So give us a little lesson here.
Yeah, it'll be short and sweet. Basically, the North Island is more populated, flatter, and less public land hunting is the gist of it. And the South Island is less populated. We have the Southern Alps, which is a big mountain range that runs through the middle of it from the bottom up, and have basically unlimited public land access and far fewer people, a lot more large river catchments that aren't really populated by people at all. So basically a far larger playground.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. And then the west coast of the South Island is basically, we've got the ocean, a few large farms and rolling hill country, and then it just basically goes from about 100 meters or like 100 meters above sea level all the way to close to 3,000. So the jump is really massive. And then the east coast is a little bit more mellow in terms of a few farms and then far more kilometers of rolling hill country, and then you ease into the bigger mountains. But yeah, there's a small town that we moved to called Hokitika, which is where I still am here now, and it's in the heart of the South Island on the west coast, which is pretty much hunting mecca.
It sounds like it. So you grew up on the hobbyist farm type of setting, a rural setting with your folks. Your mom was very familiar with equine setting with horses and such, and you boys were able to run wild. At what age or what kind of influence did you have that compelled you to start hunting instead of getting your meat from the grocery store?
Yeah, little rural school. Basically, my two best friends at that school, both of their parents were just right into hunting, and I ended up would go out and would shoot rabbits and stuff, but it would all be at their place. So I'd always be itching to go for a sleepover on the weekend to go hunting with them. And I can't put my finger on the pulse of what it was, but it seemed so natural and enjoyable. Like the urge and the draw was just, sure, like we've all felt before. It's hard to explain, but I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do and what I want to pursue. Yeah, we ended up, before I left, we went on a hunting trip. They promised me they would go out and try to shoot a deer. So I shot a deer with a rifle quite young, and it was kind of some big emotions. I feel like pulling the trigger. I didn't really know what I did, but it's interesting that kind of weirdly sparked. In my head, I was like, I want to be a hunter, but I don't know if rifle hunting is exactly how I want to hunt. I just feel like I had some emotions tied up with killing something, and it all happened so quickly. And I was like, I don't really know how I quite feel about that, but I definitely still want to go hunting.
I can see that. And I don't think it's something that's easy to articulate in just words. Like I know I've said it before in the show, but when folks ask me, particularly folks that are not privy to hunting, they ask, you love wildlife, you love animals. What's it feel like to kill your quarry? And I usually say that it's equal parts joy and remorse. Happy this journey has culminated to a climactic end. I'm happy that I was outside and in creation and had the experience. I'm happy that my work paid off. I'm happy that I've got clean protein for my family and my friends and my neighbors. But I'm sad that the journey does come to an end. I'm sad that this beautiful sentient being has now expired. I'm sad that there's still a life that has to be taken to feed another life. And I think these are all natural human emotions. And if you lose either one of those, the joy or the remorse, there's probably something wrong, and you probably need to sit back and reflect. But I do appreciate your thoughts on the adjacent thought to that is sometimes the rifle. I also rifle hunt sometimes, Poldi, especially late in the season here. I don't have enough meat in the freezer, man. I'm taking out the lever gun, or I'm taking my boys, when I take my kids out, a lot of times with rifle. But generally, I'm out there with a stick bow. But man, there is something to say for not having the rigor of the journey like you would with the stick bow compared to a rifle, right? Like I can't put my finger on it, but sometimes the celebration is there. You're very happy and grateful, but there's a certain amount of rigor that might be missing. So there's a little bit of a void there.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I feel like you worded that perfectly. Yeah, I guess from there, I had just a little inkling in my mind that bow hunting was something. And, hell, I could have pulled that idea out of a cereal box. There's nothing that there was like, this is why I want to do it. And I feel like the high school that I went to in Hokitika, once we moved to the South Island, that was like the perfect opportunity. One of our school teachers there, he was the outdoor ed and the physics teacher, Bruce Barnes. He's basically been whitewater kayaking and bow hunting since he can remember. And I was like, this is perfect. I was just getting into the age where I had a bit of an after school job and still be going hunting with friends, but I just really wanted to get into shooting bigger game, whether that was feral goats and deer and stuff. But I guess I expressed my interest to him, and he was kind enough to basically sacrifice a bunch of his time and knowledge and resources. He had an old compound bow that he set up for me, and that was the big rock teetering on the edge of the hill, and I just got pushed off. And I feel like all my teenage years through high school was just fully engulfed. I'd be shooting before school and after school, and getting mum to drop me off at certain public land hunting points. And New Zealand in the schooling industry, like the schooling culture is so interesting. You're either really into sports, or you're really into like outdoor education, whether you're going tramping or hiking and kayaking and rock climbing. And I totally went down the hiking and climbing and whitewater kayaking route, but that gave me a lot of skill in terms of being and navigating terrain and being in tune with the weather and all that sort of stuff. And that kind of started this big sort of, I guess, started the right drive and direction of how I hunt today, which is larger periods of time, usually by myself in the backcountry, pushing a few different, I guess, hobbies to the to the extreme.
I think that's a good point, actually, because you do a lot of hiking and camping and just a lot of things outdoors, but you do this pretty intense whitewater rafting or whitewater kayaking, right? And that's a challenge in its own right, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, all those things. But it also probably translates to just generally operating in a harsh or austere environment under pressure that allows you to remain a little bit more calm in uncertain circumstances while you're on the mountain.
Yeah, most definitely. So transferable. Yeah, it's just being in such an uncomfortable location, but knowing that you have to make a pretty calculated set of, I guess, like a calculated plan to actually, not necessarily even what's more, if your tent doesn't get ripped down overnight sort of thing, you're constantly thinking about the potential outcome and how you're going to navigate that.
Yeah, that's really something special. So you're 25 now. At what age did you pick up a trad bow, a traditional bow?
Yeah. So yeah, I mucked around with the compound bow for, must have been close to 6 or 7 years, and that was hunting with the teacher, Bruce. So he had a compound as well, and then it must have been 3.5 years ago now, maybe coming on 4 years. No, 3.5 years. That was actually on a whitewater kayaking trip in the States. We started in California and ended in Canada. Just a big road trip kayaking.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was insane. Anyway, the compound, it was when I first started, it was shooting every day and just trying to unbox this new hobby and trying to get accurate and efficient enough to be able to harvest red deer and tar and chamois. But that drive and that need to train really hard got to a point where I wouldn't need to pick it up for a couple of weeks and I'd still be able to shoot something at 40, 50 meters. And I just had this urge to make things a little bit harder for the sake of it, just because I guess that's why I picked up bow hunting in the first place with the compound, was to justify my urge to want to, like you said, kill such a majestic animal, and just pulling the trigger just didn't quite feel right. Anyway, Three Rivers Archery, I ordered a recurve from them when I was in the States. I was like, yeah, now's the time. When I get home, and I'll just take this new journey by the horns and totally see where it goes. And then, yeah, it's been quite a whirlwind since then. Heaps and heaps of time shooting and lots of online. You're trying to learn and teach yourself how to tune the recurve and getting arrow flight. In New Zealand's horrific. Well, basically every second day it's raining, playing around with fletchings and trad vanes and all sorts to try get a setup that I was happy with, that I could be shooting out to 30 meters with. Depending on where I go, I'll take a little rangefinder as well. Just I do a little bit of, I guess, aiming with my broadhead and the tip of the arrow, just to try keep things nice and calculated, especially up on the tussock when there's longer shots. But yeah, 3.5 years is the stickbow journey.
That's great, man. I'm 40 years young, and I think I'm just now on my 4th year, so I'm not too far ahead of you. And I can tell you right now, I'm more than likely not taking a 30-meter poke at an animal. I'm usually trying to stay within 20. But it is, I think a lot of people actually have that initial journey with a compound before they pick up a longbow or recurve. And there's some unique circumstances where folks pick up a longbow as a kid, or their old man is a traditional archer, traditional bow hunter, and they stick with that. But I used a compound bow for, I don't know, 20 years or something like that before I started using a single stick and string. And one thing that I realized is that I've always loved bow hunting, but I didn't really love archery per se. And then when I started shooting with a longbow or a recurve or a self bow, I love archery. Like I like to sit in my yard and shoot at targets and all of those things. But formerly, I practiced out of necessity with a compound, but I didn't practice because I really loved it. And again, and that might be unique to me. And it's not to beat up on the compound hunting because it's still hard and it's still a challenge to close the distance with that piece of engineering. But man, I find a lot more therapy or therapeutic use out of shooting in my yard or at a local range or stump shooting with a longbow or a self bow more so than I did with a compound. How do you feel on that?
Yeah, massively. And it's what I thought in my brain of, I wanted a little bit more excitement out of the training aspect or everything like behind the scenes and shooting and basically not being able to hit a barn door at 10 meters and then being like, all right, it's time to rein it in. And now, exactly like you said, it made me smile. But to be able to go stump shooting and your arrow's not going that fast, you can actually watch it fly down towards your target and you can shoot some longer shots just for the hell of it. And it's amazing. It is therapeutic. And
that is true. I think watching your arrow move, especially if you're doing like a 30-40 yard shot, for me, not on game, but at a target or a stump or a leaf or whatever that's on the ground, there is something extremely just relaxing about that arc that an arrow makes and the thump that it makes. It's akin to watching the flames on your campfire. It has a stimulus that is relaxing and gratifying.
Most definitely. Yeah, the compound just goes a little bit too quick. You can't even see arrow.
Yeah. Sometimes it's cool to see an arrow go. I was talking to a guy the other day and he was like, we're still in the tail end of winter out here, but most of the deer seasons have all ended other than some places really in the desert. So like the American Southwest or in Mexico, I think some folks are still chasing coos deer. And I was talking to a guy and he said, I took the compound out because I know I'd have some longer shots. He goes, it's been a long time since I shot my compound, but it was fun to see an arrow go fast. And I've since given my compound away to a buddy, but I was thinking about the fact, I'm like, yeah, like it's been a long time since I saw an arrow moving at like 290 feet per second compared to maybe a $170 or $180 that I might be pulling off on a good day with my stick bow.
Yeah, most definitely.
So, man, you've got a pile of animals. So were you fortunate enough to start harvesting and killing animals your first year with a trad bow?
Yeah. I feel like with the compound and the accessibility in New Zealand, I probably shot close to 100 big game with the compound in my compound journey through high school and then a couple of years studying post high school. But I feel like I had a base to go into and then a lot of research and just a lot of shooting with the recurve early on. And once I was happy with 15, 20 meters, how I was shooting, it's an absolute fluke, but I shot a red deer on the first trip I went out with.
First trips. Wow.
Yeah. And it's
all the traditional bow hunters in the States, especially the guys that are still in their early years of it, are just like shaking their heads right now. Man, that's in both celebration for you, but also with a little bit of jealousy because it can be a grind.
Oh my God. And it's so funny. I'm in a grind at the moment. I haven't shot a deer in a couple months and I'm like, God, I've had some good luck and some bad luck. But this was a special one. I was actually walking in to go tar hunting. We've got all these big river catchments that flow out of our Southern Alps and we have some amazing topographical maps and you're constantly scouring them, trying to find the new honey hole, the new good spot to go to. But we have a lot of red deer that just live on the river flats and in the bush. So I was sidling into this head basin and the bush was just getting into this sort of subalpine, about 800 meters above sea level. And there's just this big blown out creek and maybe 30, 40 meters through this gap in the trees, I saw a deer feeding. It's just a nice hind. And there was a nice dropping wind off the face. There was a creek flowing really loudly. And I instantly got the shivers. I was like, jeepers, this could actually come together really well. Snuck in and it was like a 15-meter shot broadside, head down feeding. And I was like, my God, that was ridiculous. Yeah.
Those are some exceptional circumstances. That's really nice though.
Yeah.
You painted quite the picturesque scene though, with the wind blowing and the river bottom and the river flowing and everything else. What a beautiful piece of imagery to take your first big game animal with a stick bow.
Yeah, it was very special. And for that all to go so well, I feel like that definitely, it just ramped the excitement and drive pretty early on in the piece, which was, I guess lucky, meant to be.
I think you had a good foundation of woodsmanship that helped make that successful from years of carrying around a compound bow and knowing the area and the terrain and everything else.
Definitely. Yeah.
What are you shooting nowadays? What's your bow setup? And we don't do a lot of gear talk on here, but I'm curious because I know you said you initially got a recurve, I think, from Three Rivers when you're here in the States. Is that the same bow you're shooting?
Yeah, so I still have that riser. It's a Dala, a 21-inch, just aluminium ILF riser. And yes, I forked out some money and got some carbon at 50 pounds. So it's 64 inches overall length, and just have a tight spot quiver. It's like a very traditional setup in a sense, but I feel like I'm still at that transitioning stage. There's levels. There's rifle, there's compound, there's recurve, there's long bow, stick bow, whatever. You can you can make it as hard as you want, but that's the sort of hard wearing bow at the moment. Just the environment's pretty angry as well. Like I've snapped so many cheap ILF limbs, just having it strapped to your pack and all sorts. I'm worried to break like a really nice wooden long bow.
If you got a $2,000 work of art that you're carrying around, it's a lot more heartbreaking if that takes a tumble down the mountain.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. But it's funny you say that. A friend of mine, a knife maker in Christchurch, Samuel Harris, he's just made a 2-piece longbow. I'll have to send you some photos. It's an amazing. I haven't actually seen it in person, but he's seen my journey and he was like, shit, you need to shoot some animals with something even more primitive. So he's made this. It's a work of art. I'm scared to even take it into the bush, but that'll be something to play around with in the future.
Oh man, that's really cool. Yeah, I'd probably be a better archer if I just stuck with one bow all the time, the whole year. But half the time I grab a bow off the wall, and before I go to the woods, I fling a couple arrows. Widely over the past year, I've mostly used my Fred Bear 3-piece takedown, my Bear Archery, and I love it. It's really beautiful. But I also really I grab a self bow on a regular basis, where something that I've made myself. And it's just like how I feel on that day. And whether it's, I can probably get a little bit more range out of my recurve than I can my self bow or whatever that might be at the time. But it's cool, man. But I also think that it's either it's internal or external pressure to be what the purists would call traditional or primitive or whatever. Man, I get a hard time sometimes where I'm shooting a self bow that I made out of a piece of Osage myself, but I'll fling some carbon arrows through it, and people rarely get their panties in a bunch when stuff like that happens. I get it. It's not the perfect marriage, but if it's fun and I'm enjoying it, that's all that really matters, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
But I do find I find specific joys out of shooting a recurve or a longbow or a self bow, but I'm also okay with bastardizing all of them and just shooting and having fun.
Yeah, and that's actually what it all comes down to. It's if someone gets a huge kick out of making their own wooden arrows and having a very purist setup, awesome. But it's not the same for everyone. It's very obviously not the same.
Yeah, very much. So I understand, and you're going to have to educate us on New Zealand and the game a little bit, but basically almost anything you're hunting out there, is anything native or is everything introduced and invasive at this point?
Yeah, so everything, we don't actually, maybe some lizards or something small, we don't have any native mammals. So all of our deer species, the tahr and the chamois, we've got wild goats, wild sheep, it's all introduced and it's all classified as a pest. So you can literally 12 months a year, you can hunt and shoot as many of them as you possibly can. And
wow.
the numbers are still insane because of the terrain and weather that keeps them safe.
And the lack of predation too, right? You don't have like wolves and bears running around that are taking these critters out.
Yeah, the only thing that, occasionally will kill a deer is they get caught in a flood or something. But yeah, no predation at all whatsoever. The deer numbers are getting to a point, and we also have smaller mammals like possums and stoats and rats that they predate on our native birds. The government literally drops aerial poison from helicopters because of the it's so inaccessible. And yeah, I guess like the budgeting and the way they've all seen it, it's a very controversial thing. A lot of people are completely against this aerial poisoning, but they don't have any other option. Otherwise, the animal numbers are just actually going completely bonkers and ruining forests and landscape and doing more damage than they can control.
Yeah, because I've never been on that part of the globe. I've been fortunate enough to hunt some goats and the axis deer in Hawaii on a couple of the different islands, and they're widely invasive and they can be very destructive because they're fairly prolific breeders, but they're hardy, and there's not another predator on the Hawaiian island chain. It's just humans, and it's wild to see deer herds of a couple hundred at a time. But also just understanding, like when I was looking out, you can see the grazing line in the forest on the mountainside. Like anything that basically is from where the deer can stand up and reach, like on trees, and everything else is barren at that point. And granted, I think for the most part, New Zealand has more, depending on what island in Hawaii, but generally more rain and more rugged like countryside on the southern island. Are you seeing, what is the level of kind of the ecological damage from like the larger mammals that are on the island?
Yeah, so the deer that live down in the forests and on our river flats and whatnot, you'll definitely see their browsing in the bush and whatnot. But honestly, enough people hunt that all the close accessible places deer numbers do get kept in check. And then there's also a lot of like meat recovery from helicopters. So they'll fly and they'll shoot deer out of helicopters and then sling load them back to their chiller truck and export the venison to Europe or wherever the market's buying. So that keeps them in check as well. But our worst environmental damages are up in the alpine. So all of our alpine shrubs and herbs and flowers, they just grow so slow. The environment's insane to even survive. But the Himalayan tar and the chamois, it's like the perfect environment for them, and that's where the numbers have gotten out of control. And there's places, close to some of our high mountains, Mount Cook or Mount Sefton, that you come back down to the scrub line where it takes a couple of days to even walk there, and we have a lot of no-fly zones. So basically they're in their own world breeding, and the damage, you can see it. It's really hot, like hillsides and what would normally be just like this amazing, especially in spring, like green, luscious, flowery alpine meadow is basically just mud.
Wow.
That's where the damage is done, up in the alpine.
Man, that's brutal. And I know it's probably a bit of a love-hate relationship, right? Like that those numbers need to be significantly reduced, right? For ecological diversity, native browse, small native organisms, all that good stuff. But the hunter in you, how is that? Are you kind of like, this is pretty awesome because there's the really good game densities, or how do you deal with that internal struggle?
I feel quite torn usually. No, if I was selfish, and that's what makes me happy to see a mob of 50 plus spring bull tar feeding in my favorite place where I know I can get a really good stalk on. I'm like, this is what New Zealand's designed for. in my selfish, I just want to go hunting brain. But then definitely on the other hand, I'll try shoot a few extra on the way out just to keep their numbers in check. But now the government's totally clued on. They shoot thousands and thousands out of helicopter each year, which is, it's pretty hectic. But definitely some spots have been ruined because of that, but you just have to be a little bit more creative and I guess work a little bit harder.
Yeah. You also have a pretty diverse selection of things to chase out there, right? I
Yes.
mean, so I know you've got the red deer. Do you have other deer species?
Yeah, so we actually have a small population of elk down in Fiordland as well, but that interbred with the red deer a little bit. Basically, you're just shooting a red elk hybrid, which I haven't actually hunted properly yet, but that'll be on the cards in a couple months. Then we also have fallow deer and white-tailed deer on the South Island.
It's weird to fathom white-tailed deer in New Zealand.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I forgot about the fallow deer because those came from Europe, didn't they?
Yes, yeah, they did. Far less fallow deer on public land. There definitely are places where they are on public land, but they seem to be suckers for the green grass and the big sort of high country stations down south. Have lots of animals there. And then two smaller herds of the whitetail, one close to Queenstown and then another on an island actually below the South Island called Stewart Island. And those are probably our best numbers of whitetail are down on this island.
It's just wild to me thinking about it.
It's bizarre. It really is.
Yeah. Wow, that's really wild. And then you've got a variety of goats and sheep, and then you've also got like Mouflon sheep that came from Europe. You've got the Himalayan Star, which basically look like a cross between something that came out of a George Lucas film and like a goat-sized muskox.
Yeah,
like it looks like it's from a different world.
Yeah.
So,
They're quite an impressive animal. And our North Island.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry, the chamois. And then to make it even more random, our North Island has another 3 deer species: Samba, Rusa, and Sika.
No kidding. Those are all Asiatic, right?
Yeah. Which is, I've hunted them and they're just such a smart deer compared to the red deer. They're just so cunning. They're twitchy. I've had multiple Rusa jump the string, just completely dodge my arrow after days and days of trying to even get into bow range, and then they just jump the string and that's the opportunity gone.
That's how I feel. Do you guys have the axis deer or the chittle?
No, we don't. No. They seem mega twitchy though, right?
Dude, that's the most hyper vigilant twitchy thing I've ever hunted. So it is a challenge with the stick bow for sure. We were in Hawaii hunting last year, and a buddy and mentor of mine got one, but there were like 4 other guys in camp for 5 days of hunting that didn't connect, and there were good 5, 6, 7 arrows that got flung. But I had those deer would darn near do backflips when that arrow gets released, and within 20 yards. And it's wild how they'll either duck, and when they duck, they go flat to the ground, or they will jump, and they'll jump 2 meters in the air. And
wow.
It's the wildest thing.
It makes you feel pretty small.
Yeah, I feel like those Asiatic deer species, they're used to being hunted by tigers and stuff, so they're pretty skittish and hyper vigilant. But yeah, we have Sika here in the Delaware, Maryland, Virginia region. So the northeast United States. So they were like gifted at some point, and they flourished in the swamps and marshes out here. And because they really like to be in that wet, swampy stuff, they haven't imposed a lot of competition with the local or resident whitetail herds.
Yeah.
So the states of those 3 states haven't put a lot of work into. There's no eradication plan. Instead, there is a very structured, specific management plan to not quell the herd, but to manage it. So there are numbers there. It brings in money and revenue and all that stuff, but also because it gives hunters an additional species to hunt that is not also in direct competition with a native species for sure. But I've never hunted the Sika deer, but I think they're really cool looking. They look like a dwarf elk, so to speak. They got like that elky look. They have the little roar thing. I've heard they're really great table fare, but they're small. They're weirdly small too.
Yeah.
I've never had that.
I had no idea that you had Sika in the States. That's hilarious.
Yeah, man. I think Maryland has the largest population. I think they call them swamp ghosts because they're notoriously cunning, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know, I'm a few states south of there, so we don't have them. Although they probably thrive here because I live in the swamp too. So I'm chasing whitetails in the middle of the swamp and getting murdered by mosquitoes all the time. So
mosquitoes, what a horrible little insect.
Oh gosh, so bad. And the American South too. They're such jerk offs. They're mean.
Yeah.
My buddies that live in the desert in the Southwest or out in California or Colorado, stuff like that, they don't really deal with mosquitoes very often, and I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, we have a small bug called a sandfly. It's basically a small mosquito. Then there's no repellent that actually works. You just have to be fully rugged up, head to toe. But like your hands or your fingers, a deer will be looking at you, or you just right into a stalk and your fingers will just be black with these little flies.
Yeah, that's awful.
And you're trying not to move. You're not trying not to get them in your eyes.
Well, that sounds miserable. I've talked to guys that are in Alaska when there's like the big mosquito hatches and they're chasing moose and stuff. And they're like, you're within 25, 30 meters of a moose and you're trying not to slap at the mosquitoes that are like landing on your face or at the creases of your eyes or something. Oh man, I think that would be hard. I think I'd just net up. I'd put a mosquito net on it.
You'd have to.
When I'm scouting out here in the summertime, I put a mosquito net on because they're so bad when it's hot outside. Yeah, no fun. What do you do in the real world when you're not climbing the mountains and throwing arrows through things?
Yeah, taking life pretty crudely. I teach whitewater kayaking and I contract to a few different schools, a kayak school, and then also like a polytechnic that has a whitewater element to their 2-year outdoor and leadership guiding course. I'm basically my own boss, and I'll just work enough, maybe 3 or 4 months a year, to sustain my hobby of hunting. Like I've got it pretty easy. My parents still live in Hokitika, and I get on really well with them, and I kind of use their house as a bit of a base. I'm barely ever here because I'm usually hunting or have some sort of trip or working elsewhere for 3 or 4 week stints, but that's made this all possible, I guess.
Very much, but you've chosen a path, now that is providing you that seasonal subsistence, but also the appropriate time to where you can go escape and do the things that bring you a lot of joy.
Yeah. Also random little handy jobs of like both of my brothers, we had a workshop growing up. They taught me how to weld, and I can keep my own a little bit in that sort of profession. Sometimes when I actually need to save up for a bigger trip, I'll try to do a little bit of welding or engineering work in town here, which is great. But yeah, it's an interesting lifestyle, and I feel like I'll try go down a route of maybe securing some slightly more consistent work. I'd love to be able to buy a small property one day and I guess move on with that sort of lifestyle and be able to still go hunting as much as I possibly can.
Don't rush it.
Yeah.
So I think it's really awesome. But man, so because chasing these exotic critters around the mountains or the river bottoms or the lush countryside in New Zealand is pretty foreign to a lot of the folks that are listening to this, I'm sure. You've got to hook us up with a couple of good stories. So like one, tell us a good story, because I'm mesmerized by the Himalayan tahr. So selfishly, I need a good story of you connecting to one of those on the mountainside with a stick bow.
Yeah, that's good. The best story would probably have to be my first. So probably it must have been a month or two after I shot that red deer, which was my first big game. And I was trying to tune arrows every second day. I was just biting off far more than I could chew in terms of tuning my bow and broadheads. And I ended up having a quiver full of aluminium arrows. And they were actually flying really well. And I was like, cool, my ethical range is 15 meters. So yeah, you're always trying to go to new spots, especially with the helicopter culling. You'll spend 12 plus hours, what feels like the hardest things you've ever done in terms of pushing through scrub and bush. You'll get to a spot and there's just piles of dead tusk.
Oh,
that aside, this hunting trip, I was like, cool, I'm just going to go to a new spot. I haven't been here before. I drive a couple hours south, and I get to basically just walk off the highway straight up the hill, close to, there was a 1,400 meters elevation gain, no track, and it gets to a point where you're probably moving about half a kilometer every hour or so, just because the bush, your pack's off and you're pushing it. But anyway, backtrack a little bit. I get my pack out of the car and I start putting my bow together, and with the ILF, with the 3-piece bow, I had it as a takedown, so it's an ILF now, but the DAS, you can switch it in between. Anyway, I had a little brass bushing in my limb that had the thread that I'd connected on. That fell out of the limb, and then I was standing on this big stop bank. Anyway, this little brass lug just fell all the way down this crack. Couldn't get it, so I had to drive all the way home. I ended up engineering, I lathed and threaded a new piece that night, and then drove down the next morning. So I was already a day behind and a little bit annoyed. And I was like, gosh.
Just a little bit.
Such a process. But yeah, I climb up to this new, on the topographical maps, you're looking for this really nice huntable country where the car will be coming out to feed. And you can also look at like the control maps where the helicopters have been shooting. So this spot ticked all the boxes, and I climb up and don't actually see anything. Once I break the tussock, I camp the first night. There's a couple chamois in the head basin of this creek, but chamois' eyesight, they basically make it near impossible to shoot them on the tussock, like the big open country. So I didn't actually bother stalking them. And in the morning, I spotted the only tar of the trip way down this face, and he ended up feeding all the way up throughout the day, and I just watched him off this high point. I was basically just reading a book and sunning myself, and this tar slowly just fed his way up. Super, super old. You could see it in his coat, like matty, and it's just an old animal. And he ends up bedding up in it, like quite a good spot. And I weirdly navigate this very sharp spur down to him. And I'm kind of like, had to put the bow on my pack, so I had both arms sort of thing to hold on to. That's how steep it was, foliage. And so I'm weaseling my way down, and I get to the point where I roughly knew where he bedded down. So the bow's ready, and I'm just arrows knocked, and I'm just moving further and further forward to try find where he was bedded down. And I ended up spooking him out of his bed, probably at about 5 meters. He was just like, when they bed down, they can just find little nooks in the side of that country. And he spooked out and stopped at about 15 meters. And yeah, and I don't know if this is a good story or not, but I ended up shooting, and it was such a bad shot. I hit him directly in the back leg, a meter off. Yeah, so it was like the most horrific shot ever. And he runs out of sight just up over this hill. And I was just like, God, I just spent all this time and effort, and for what I thought my shooting was totally fine. But I guess early on in the traditional, I was just jacked up on adrenaline. I just pulled the shot so bad. Anyway, I knock another arrow and I pop straight over. And luckily he's standing in this creek. Like the shot, like he couldn't really move that fast. And then I put a second shot into him right then and there. And then basically slid down this creek, probably close to 60 or 70 meters further than when I shot him. It was just very steep, and luckily he got caught up in this small little pool before. There's cliffs and all sorts of random. I was just like, oh God, the recovery might not actually be possible. But yeah, I kind of work my way down and just to hold the bow, and I'm picking up a broken aluminium arrow, and I'm just laughing to myself, like, what am I actually doing in this environment with this equipment? I was like, I would have rather missed completely than hit him where I did, but it happened, and I just dealt with it in the situation. But I was just, I guess the awe and euphoria that I felt in that moment, I was like, this is insane. Yeah, that was a pretty special one.
Oh yeah, but you know what? I think anybody that's been doing this for any amount of time, that moment where you said, what am I doing? What am I doing this for? What am I doing? Why am I here with this equipment? Because whether there's circumstances like what you just described, or there's just you miss, or you've watched dozens of deer go by at 40 meters, right? Instead of 20, and you're like, if I had any other piece of equipment, those would be dead deer, right? But because I'm doing this, it's self-imposed restriction. So yeah, it can certainly be frustrating. But man, I'm glad that despite having an unfortunate first shot, you were able to follow through and still recover. Super cool animal.
Yeah, and that animal, basically no bottom teeth, close to 15 years old, probably wouldn't have made it through the next winter, sort of thing. Like, to shoot it was just a special animal. Like, his horns were like broomed down, worn down.
Nice.
Yeah, just a real special one. Yeah, it was an amazing hunt.
Oh, I love it, man. So what is your favorite animal to hunt out there in New Zealand?
Oh, it really would have to be the tahr.
Yeah.
It's interesting because if you put the hard work in, they're actually a very stalkable animal. They're definitely switched on, but they're not as switched on as a deer. There's been many a times hunting with a deer where I'm just like, the likelihood here is just so bad that just even trying to draw my bow back, they're looking and running, sort of thing. But the tahr, it seemed to me, because you can access some pretty amazing locations, they are a far more doable animal to hunt, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because they seem so tough because they're in such higher altitudes, rugged terrain, that which can be a challenge in itself. But is it one of those situations where once you're up there, like getting close to them is a little easier than maybe a deer or a chamois?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, like the eyesight's good, but it's not as good as a chamois or a deer. They'll spook and then they'll stop and look back, sort of thing. With a deer, they just would never give you that second chance or shot opportunity. And then their numbers are pretty good in locations. And also, I feel potentially the outside looking in terms of tahr hunting culture, a lot of rifle hunters will shoot tahr on the top of mountains and very big, open, rugged terrain, but they also live slightly lower down and in more scrubby terrain where stalking is far more achievable, and that's the areas that I'll be targeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. How are they for table fare?
Yeah, they're great. The only thing is getting the meat out is the biggest crux. So I guess the way I hunt is I'm good at bow hunting, but I've got all the nice lightweight camping equipment. I've got good boots, and you're basically a lightweight mountaineer, and then also good at hunting. Like, you need to match the two to be comfortable enough in that environment to then stay there long enough to get a shot opportunity if you want to be successful. Location dependent will be whether you actually carry meat out. So quite often I won't actually take it all out. It's more of a thrill of the chase with the tahr. Yeah.
I can get that, especially because from a management and conservation standpoint, I know some people will hunt pigs and not take them out, especially when they're like in a very prolific populated area, right? Because either it's hot or it's whatever the circumstances are, or they're just like, look, they're devastating. We have to terminate these invasive animals. I know as a hunter, though, it's probably hard a little bit, like emotionally or spiritually, to not have that meat. But like on the other side, with as much as you hunt, do you find that you guys eat a lot of wild game, or what is primary source? What is your favorite wild game to eat? I guess would be a more direct question.
Yeah, definitely. It must be hand in hand. We have feral goats as well, which, they're kind of widespread, but it'd have to be either red deer or the feral goat. They tend to put on a lot more condition and fat consistently throughout the year than the deer do. Our deer, they'll fluctuate with the season a lot and their rut, like any deer species, but right now they've actually got a little bit of body fat on, but after their rut, they're skinny and going straight into winter.
It's hard, man, especially the bucks and the bulls, right? They get worn ragged through the rut, and they lose 25-30% of their mass, I think, during that time frame. So it can be tough.
That's such an insane turnaround. But I feel like I'll change the outcome of the trip that I want. If I want to put some meat in the freezer, which is basically number one, I'll go to a closer spot and actually target a nice eating animal, whether that's a yearling or a velvet stag. And then I'll make sure I have capacity to carry it all out or float it out with a pack raft or something like that.
Nice.
And then you go through phases of getting itchy feet to then go chase tahr when you know that the freezer's full and you just sort of want to go for a bigger blowout.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been really fun. I think in a few months we'll have to do this this one we dove into a little Poldi 101, and maybe next time we'll talk about just a little bit about what it's like to hunt New Zealand and dive into some of that, because I'm sure some people think about things that they want to plan 2, 3, 4 years out, and understanding that maybe New Zealand's not on their radar, and it could be. Then again, as a hunter, you might be like, no, this place sucks. Stay out. You guys don't want to come here. This secret spot, and that's fine too. But either way, brother, like, it's seriously a pleasure talking to you. But before we taper off, where can people find you? Because I know you've got your Instagram, but you've also got a YouTube too, right?
I've just been starting to put a little bit more effort into there. It's just my name hyphenated with an S, so just Poldi's, which is my YouTube channel. And then, also just on Instagram. But that's,
Right on. We'll put all that in the show notes too, because man, there are some cool journeys documented on there that I think would make anybody that likes to shoot a bow dream about.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I definitely like to put the effort in, and it's always nice to go back over those moments and that footage. It just makes it feel even more special.
Indeed.